let's open up a ship to work with. Sometimes you want to make a collision entity for a ship that is not a simple shape. Now in this case this one happens to be, and that was by design a long time ago, but what I'm going to show you can be applied to irregular shaped ships. First I'm going to show a very simple way to do it, and a lot of you would just simply tell it to use a mesh shape or a sphere shape, which is going to work just fine, but not knowing whether bullet physics inside is going to create a high polygon sphere shape or not. You want your collision cage or shape to be as low poly as possible. One of the things I'm going to do right here is I'm going to create a 6 segment sphere. Now you could just click this and get your 30 something segment sphere or 16 segment, but if you right click any one of these options here, any one of these entities here, if I wanted to make a plane with 10 segments, I could just enter 10 there. Anyhow, what we're going to do now is make sure that I have this in mouse selection mode is off. See how the little 0 down here? Alright, so we have the new sphere. We're going to rotate that. Now I want to do it precisely, so I'm going to direct enter a 90-degree rotation on the x-axis, and I want to bake that rotation into the mesh. So I'm hitting fix mesh. It's now been baked. The mesh is a bit small, so let's just put it in wireframe here. That's the W key, or you could go into here and change the fill mode. And I'm going to scale this up. Now, right now, we can use uniform scale. That's close enough, just in the missiles. So, roughly 5 scale. Now, I'm going to rebake that scale. So, if you look at it, the mesh is dead on where it should be. Now, it's not positioned exactly where it could be, so I'm going to move it forward a bit. That's pretty darn close to where it needs to be. Now, this is an extremely lower polygon than a normal sphere collision mesh. It doesn't matter that a couple things stick past it or it doesn't tightly hug. I mean, you could call it the shield distance or whatever, but it's a better approximation than using the actual mesh shape itself. But to get it in a place where nuclear fusion can use this shape in a simple way, you need to select the root of the complex shape. If you can see, it's quite complex, and use copy to parent. The way this works, you can select even a surface as a child. Say OK, and now we've set a copy. Now I can tell just by looking at this we can gonna need to make some edits. So anyhow, here's sphere, and I'm going to save its scale, just in case I want that. But the original sphere we made, I'm just going to delete it now. Don't need it. Now, see how there's the root mesh, which used to contain no surfaces, now actually contains a surface. Wonderful. We're going to have this surface selected. And actually, let's just do this. We have the surface itself selected. And if I recall, there we go, that put the surface where it should be. Now the neat thing about surfaces, you don't need to bake them. Once they're moved, they're moved. So I don't know if you caught that little trick with the recall, but there, it's roughly exactly where it should be. Now that little trick, if you didn't notice it, was before I killed the original sphere, I used the save, position, rotate, and scale button to save where it was so that when I went into the surface on this mesh, I could apply that to the surface itself, and then puts the cage exactly where it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and save this now. So there's our scene route, and we're going to click save, but we're going to call this, just add the word call to that so I'll know that it's got a collision mesh. That's for my own purposes. I'm going to explain how this works now. When in nuclear fusion, when you want to set an entity to have collision, or a mesh shape collision, set it to use a mesh shape, but tell it children false. You don't want to add its children's meshes to its total shape. So again, set it false. It will only look for the shapes that are immediate surfaces of that entity. In this case, we only have one, this surface we just created here. So when you tell it to make the scene route for this fighter a mesh shape, it's only going to look for this surface that we just created. And now that's wonderful, but in the game you're not going to want to see this cage. So go into your surface editing and simply take the alpha for that and set that to 0. And you can change its fill mode to be full filled so that it wouldn't matter if you left it at, say, don't know if you could see that. Now there's another funny thing about this, and it only pertains really to space fighters. If you were going to make a space fighter, you can use that actually as your shield bubble to actually display. But in this case, we're not going to worry about that. You would just set it to 0. Perfectly fine, totally ready to go. And that ship is actually now ready to be loaded into a nuclear fusion game, or nuclear fusion powered game, and it will use that outer cage that we created for its simple collisions. No other code needed, just simply set mesh collisions, done. One command, you're ready to go. That simple.